The galaxy had never seen such a dark time. Entire star systems were reduced to rubble, their populations decimated under the relentless onslaught of an alien warlord known only as Karzak the Devourer. His fleet of death machines swept through peaceful territories like a cosmic plague, obliterating planets and shattering fragile alliances. No species, no matter how powerful or advanced, had been able to halt his advance. The Galactic Council, an assembly of the most influential civilizations, was overwhelmed by the chaos and despair spreading like wildfire. The council chambers, once filled with pomp and ceremony, were now tense and fraught with desperation. Species that had long been at odds were forced to unite in urgent discourse. Messages from distant worlds poured in, signals of distress, cries for aid, and desperate pleas for intervention. These were not idle requests. Entire planets were on the brink of extinction, and the Council's fleets were stretched thin, their efforts insufficient against Karzak's overwhelming forces. In the midst of this crisis, a controversial proposal emerged. Humanity, the once fringe species, barely tolerated at the Council, had earned a fearsome reputation. Originating from harsh Deathworlds where survival was a brutal, unrelenting test, humans were known for their savage adaptability and tenacity. Their planet, Earth, was a notorious Class 14 Deathworld, rife with predators, hostile environments, and unforgiving conditions that had forged humans into lethal survivors. Yet many feared them as unpredictable, even dangerous allies. Some called them barbarians, others saw them as the galaxy's last hope. After heated debates and much resistance, the Council made a fateful decision. Humanity would be called upon to lead the next phase of the defense. The humans accepted, their representative, Captain Rylus Varric, emerging as the chosen commander for the elite human fleet. Varric was a veteran of countless skirmishes on Deathworlds, a man hardened by loss and shaped by the brutal training, unique to human survival. As the human fleet prepared to deploy, the eyes of the galaxy were fixed on them, filled with a mix of hope and skepticism. Varric's orders were clear: contain Karzak's spread, protect the innocent, and bring any means necessary to turn the tide of war. His team was small but elite: combat veterans, Deathworld specialists, and strategists who thrived where others would perish. The story opens with Varric standing on the bridge of the flagship Resolute, watching the holographic map of the war-torn sector. The devastated planet, smoldering remains of cities, and shattered fleets made a grim backdrop. The galaxy's plea for help echoed in every transmission and in every haunted face in the council chambers. Varric knew the task ahead was nearly impossible, but he also knew that humans had a unique edge, a primal instinct honed by generations of surviving Deathworld horrors. Unlike the other species, humans did not merely react to threats. They embraced the chaos, turned it into strength, and fought with relentless fury. The first step was to establish a forward base on a hostile, barely charted planet near the front lines. This world was chosen deliberately. Its extreme environment was a crucible meant to test and temper human resolve. Here the humans would prepare, adapt, and strike back. As the human fleet moved out, the galaxy watched anxiously, hoping that these Deathworlders would be the deliverance the galaxy so desperately needed, or its final, unpredictable gamble. The arrival of the human fleet in the devastated sector sent ripples of shock through the Allied forces. Their ships were unlike any other, rugged and battle-scarred, designed not just for war, but for survival in environments that would kill most species instantly. To many alien observers, humans were an enigma, a species whose strength came from surviving some of the deadliest Deathworlds in the galaxy, planets where gravity crushed bones, atmospheres were toxic, and predators were relentless. As the flagship Resolute descended toward the planet chosen for their forward base, the alien diplomats and military officers exchanged uneasy glances. Captain Rylus Varric knew their skepticism all too well, but he also understood that these doubts came from ignorance of humanity's true nature. On Earth, and on other human colonies, generations had been forged in crucibles far harsher than anything the Galactic Council worlds had faced. It was this brutal upbringing that gave humans their edge, a combination of savage adaptability, creative improvisation, and a refusal to surrender even when all odds were against them. The base planet, dubbed Harrow by the humans, was a Class 13 Deathworld. Its landscape was jagged, with acidic rivers cutting through twisted, toxic forests. The atmosphere was thin and laced with poisonous gases, but humans arrived in biosuits specially adapted to filter and protect them. Where alien species flinched, the humans moved with confidence, their bodies conditioned for extremes of heat, cold, and toxicity. Harrow was not just a staging ground. It was a training ground designed to push the humans beyond their limits and prepare them for the brutal fight ahead. Inside the base's command center, Varric oversaw the initial operations. Alien allies, including the stoic Zalthar emissary and the wary Reknar war captain, watched as humans began fortifying their position. The humans moved quickly, constructing defensive perimeters, deploying sensor arrays hidden beneath the poisonous foliage, and conducting live fire exercises that echoed with ruthless precision. Tensions simmered among the coalition. Many aliens feared the humans' violent tactics and blunt methods. Unlike the carefully regulated warfare practiced by most galactic civilizations, humans did not hesitate to use overwhelming force or brutal psychological tactics. Some diplomats openly criticized Captain Varric, calling his methods reckless and dangerous. A particular council delegate, Ambassador Zir of the Lirathi, voiced concerns that human aggression might provoke the warlord into even harsher retaliation. Yet beneath the political maneuvering, the humans kept their focus. Small squads of Deathworld-trained soldiers conducted patrols through the toxic jungles, hunting down Karzak's advanced scouts and sabotaging enemy supply lines with guerrilla strikes. They employed tactics alien to their allies: silent ambushes, improvised traps using the planet's deadly flora, and relentless hit-and-run assaults. The human squads were shadows in the toxic forest, ghosts bringing death where no one expected. Flashbacks woven through the narrative reveal snippets of the human soldiers' pasts, surviving lethal wildlife on their homeworlds, fighting off brutal mercenary bands and enduring harsh military training where only the toughest survived. These memories explain why humans instinctively understand danger and thrive in chaos. Despite the initial distrust, some alien soldiers began to admire the humans' effectiveness. The Reknar war captain, once skeptical, quietly admitted that human tactics saved his unit during a recent skirmish. Even the cautious Zalthar emissary acknowledged that humans might be the wild card the Alliance desperately needed. The uneasy coalition held fast as news arrived that Karzak's forces were preparing for a massive strike. Humans prepared to unleash their Deathworld fury, an unrelenting storm of guerrilla warfare, brutal efficiency, and savage resilience. The galaxy's fate now hinged on whether these Deathworlders could turn their harsh upbringing into the weapon needed to stop a warlord who seemed unstoppable. The alliance between humans and the other galactic species was tenuous at best. As the human Deathworlders began their campaign against Karzak's warlord forces, cultural and tactical differences quickly surfaced, igniting friction among allies. Where humans saw practicality and survival, many aliens perceived ruthlessness and chaos. But in the crucible of war, these tensions would be tested and reshaped. The humans' first major offensive was a surprise strike on Karzak's vital supply lines. Utilizing guerrilla tactics honed on the savage Deathworlds of their origin, they attacked swiftly and vanished like shadows before the enemy could mount a defense. Alien allies watched in awe and discomfort as human squads bypassed conventional battle lines, sabotaging resource convoys, disabling communication nodes, and leaving no survivors. This was not the refined, honorable warfare many alien cultures preferred. It was brutal, efficient, and unforgiving. Captain Rylus Varric coordinated these operations with cold precision, understanding that in war hesitation meant death. His soldiers moved with a grim purpose, striking at the enemy's lifeblood with deadly creativity. But their ferocity raised concerns among alien diplomats and commanders. Ambassador Zir of the Lirathi openly condemned the humans' methods, accusing them of violating the Alliance's code of conduct. For many aliens, war was a regulated affair, bounded by rules and tradition. Humans ignored such conventions, They adapted and dominated with raw survival instinct. Within the Alliance camp, these tensions brewed like a storm. Alien soldiers whispered fears that humans' unpredictability could jeopardize the fragile coalition. At the same time, some leaders saw the undeniable truth. Without human ruthlessness, Karzak's warlord might have already crushed them all. The cultural divide reached a critical moment when Zalthar emissary demanded a formal meeting with Captain Varric. The Zalthar were known for their stoicism and honor-bound combat, and their envoy challenged Varric to a duel, not to kill, but to test the human's character and leadership. The duel was a ritual respected across many species, symbolizing trust and respect. Varric accepted, understanding the importance of bridging this divide. The duel took place under the watchful eyes of the Alliance's command. Varric's style was raw, aggressive, and relentless, a stark contrast to the measured and disciplined approach of the Zalthar. The contest was fierce, but ultimately ended with mutual respect. Varric's willingness to engage on alien terms earned grudging admiration, softening some of the Alliance's skepticism. However, just as relations began to thaw, disaster struck. Karzak's forces launched a devastating counterattack on the human base. Using superior numbers and advanced technology, they hammered the human defenses, testing their resilience. The assault was brutal and unrelenting, forcing humans and their alien allies to set aside mistrust and fight side by side for survival. In the heat of battle, human Deathworlders adapted quickly, using the hostile terrain of the base planet to their advantage. They laid ambushes in toxic forests, exploited narrow canyons for choke points, and unleashed guerrilla assaults that confounded the enemy. Alien soldiers, witnessing the humans' relentless tenacity, began to appreciate their combat style, not as savagery, but as survival. The crisis forged a fragile bond among the coalition forces. Captain Varric's leadership was pivotal, rallying not just his soldiers but alien commanders to trust in the human way of war. The battle ended with heavy losses but also a hard-won victory, proving that humanity's Deathworld fury was not just a threat to be feared, but a weapon the galaxy could wield against annihilation. The chapter closes with Varric surveying the battered base, knowing that cultural clashes were inevitable, but also understanding that only by embracing these differences could the Alliance stand a chance at victory. With the fragile Alliance hanging by a thread after the brutal counterattack, Captain Rylus Varric knew it was time to reveal humanity's deadliest asset, their bio-adapted soldiers. These were no ordinary warriors but elite combatants genetically and physiologically enhanced to endure the most extreme environments and fight with superhuman resilience. Born and bred on the harshest Deathworlds, these soldiers embodied the fierce spirit of humanity's survivalist roots. The bio-adapted troops arrived at the front lines like specters of death. Their reflexes were lightning fast, senses honed to detect even the faintest movement in the toxic jungles of the war-zone planet. Their skin was tougher than most armor, able to shrug off wounds that would cripple other species. These warriors could breathe in toxic atmospheres, endure extreme heat and cold, and recover from injuries at an astonishing rate. To the alien forces and even many humans, these Deathworlders seemed almost like mythic monsters, born from the fury of their brutal homeworlds. Captain Varric's strategy was bold. Rather than meet the enemy head-on with conventional fleet battles, he would unleash these Deathworlders in a series of guerrilla raids and surgical strikes aimed directly at crippling Karzak's command and control. The idea was to sow chaos and confusion within the enemy ranks, fracturing their cohesion and morale before a full-scale confrontation. The first strike was a daring raid on Karzak's flagship, the Oblivion's Wrath. Under cover of darkness and the planet's toxic storms, squads of bio-adapted soldiers infiltrated the massive warship using stealth technology and intimate knowledge of hostile environments. Inside the labyrinthine corridors, they moved like shadows, silent, deadly, and relentless. Their mission: sabotage the ship's core systems and eliminate high-ranking officers. The assault was brutal but precise, leaving the flagship crippled and throwing the warlord's fleet into disarray. News of the raid electrified the Allied forces and sowed panic among Karzak's commanders. The humans, long seen as unpredictable, now proved themselves as a terrifying force of nature, capable of striking anywhere and everywhere with lethal efficiency. Within the Alliance, this shift brought a new dynamic. Alien commanders who had doubted humanity's methods now sought to coordinate with Varric's forces, eager to learn the secrets behind the Deathworlders' ferocity. The uneasy coalition began to meld into a cohesive fighting force, united by a shared purpose and newfound respect. Captain Varric, however, was not content to merely defend. His vision was clear: to drive the warlord's forces back beyond the frontier and reclaim lost systems. With his Deathworlder soldiers leading the vanguard, the human fleet launched a relentless counteroffensive. Their tactics combined guerrilla strikes, rapid redeployments, and devastating firepower, exploiting the enemy's confusion and fear. The warlord's forces were unprepared for this level of ferocity. Karzak's technological advantages were neutralized by the humans' brutal adaptability and intimate knowledge of hostile environments. The battlefield became a chaotic dance of shadows and explosions, where human Deathworlders struck swiftly and vanished before retaliation. The Alliance's morale surged as victories accumulated. The tide of war shifted and hope returned to the battered galaxies. Yet beneath the triumph lay the harsh truth of humanity's way. War was brutal, unforgiving, and often merciless. The chapter closes with Captain Varric standing amidst the ruins of a recently liberated outpost, gazing at the horizon. The Deathworlders had unleashed their fury, and the galaxy would never be the same. As the human Deathworlders campaign pressed deeper into Karzak's territory, the balance of power began to shift dramatically. Captain Rylus Varric's relentless guerrilla warfare, combined with the superior adaptability and resilience of his bio-adapted soldiers, had fractured the warlord's once unassailable forces. But Karzak was no ordinary foe. He was cunning, ruthless, and willing to do anything to reclaim his dominance. Facing mounting losses and crumbling morale, Karzak unleashed a desperate gambit, a massive counteroffensive targeting the human forward base on Harrow, aiming to crush the Deathworlders before they could fully consolidate their gains. The assault was larger and more brutal than any before, featuring war machines designed to operate in the harshest conditions and swarms of elite shock troops. Despite the overwhelming odds, the humans and their alien allies stood firm. The battle for Harrow became a brutal war of attrition, fought across toxic jungles, jagged canyons, and ruined cities. The human bio-adapted soldiers used every advantage of their Deathworld training, deploying traps using the planet's deadly flora, setting ambushes in narrow passes, and leveraging their near-superhuman endurance to outlast and outmaneuver their enemies. But this battle was not fought by humans alone. Over time, alien allies had begun to shed their distrust and skepticism, adopting some of humanity's more ruthless tactics. Joint operations between humans and alien forces became increasingly effective, with once divided factions now fighting as a unified force. Vreknar War Captain, once a harsh critic, now praised human leadership, noting how their fearlessness inspired his troops to new heights. Karzak, frustrated and enraged, shifted strategies, deploying chemical weapons and biological agents designed to counter the humans' bioadaptations. Entire forests were turned into toxic wastelands, forcing the Deathworlders to rely even more heavily on their suits and rapid tactics. The cost was high, with heavy casualties on both sides, but the human forces refused to break. Amid the carnage, Captain Varric demonstrated not only military brilliance but also leadership that fostered loyalty beyond cultural divides. He worked tirelessly to bridge gaps with alien commanders, showing respect for their traditions while guiding them to embrace necessary ruthlessness. His vision of a combined galactic force, tempered by humanity's brutal survival instincts, began to take shape. The tide of war turned when a daring operation led by Varric's most trusted squad infiltrated Karzak's primary supply depot, destroying vital fuel reserves and crippling the enemy's logistics. The loss forced Karzak's fleet to retreat from the front lines to regroup, granting the Alliance precious breathing room. The victory at Harrow was a galvanizing moment for the galaxy. News of the human success spread quickly, inspiring resistance movements on occupied worlds and boosting morale among the once defeated Council fleets. The Alliance had not only survived, but had begun to push back the tide of destruction. Yet beneath the celebration lay the sobering reality. The war was far from over. Karzak's hunger for conquest was relentless, and his capacity for brutality remained unmatched. Captain Varric understood that the final confrontation loomed, and that humanity's Deathworld fury would be tested as never before. As the chapter closes, Varric prepares his forces for the next phase of the campaign, fully aware that the coming battles would demand sacrifices the galaxy had never seen, but confident that the Alliance, now tempered by blood and fire, would stand strong. The war against Karzak's forces had reached its climax. After months of brutal fighting and relentless guerrilla warfare, the Alliance, led by the human Deathworlders, was poised for a decisive battle that would determine the galaxy's fate. Captain Rylus Varric and his elite bio-adapted soldiers were prepared to face the warlord in his own stronghold, a fortress world as harsh and unforgiving as the humans' Deathworld origins. The final campaign was a masterclass in strategic brilliance and savage combat. Varric coordinated a multi-pronged assault, combining the stealth and adaptability of human squads with the heavy firepower and advanced technology of their alien allies. The plan relied on exploiting the enemy's overconfidence, sowing confusion, and striking with overwhelming precision. The Alliance's forces descended upon Karzak's fortress planet, navigating toxic storms, jagged terrain, and fortified defenses. The humans took point, leading infiltration teams that bypassed the outer defenses through deadly jungles and volcanic fissures. Their bioadaptations allowed them to survive hazards that would have destroyed other species: corrosive gases, searing heat, and crushing gravity. Inside the fortress, brutal close-quarters combat raged. Varric's Deathworlders fought with relentless ferocity, their training on hostile worlds giving them an edge in hand-to-hand combat and urban warfare. Alien allies provided critical support with long-range fire and technological expertise, but it was humanity's raw endurance and tactical cunning that turned the tide. Karzak himself emerged from his command chamber, a towering figure clad in heavy armor, radiating menace. The final confrontation between Varric and the warlord was brutal and symbolic, embodying the clash of two brutal wills. Karzak wielded advanced weaponry and raw power, but Varric relied on speed, adaptability, and sheer determination. The duel pushed both warriors to their limits. Varric's Deathworld training and bio-enhancements allowed him to absorb blows that would fell a lesser opponent. At a critical moment, using the environment to his advantage, he outmaneuvered Karzak, delivering a decisive strike that ended the warlord's reign of terror. With Karzak's defeat, the warlord's forces fell into disarray. The Alliance swept through the remaining enemy troops, liberating occupied systems and restoring peace. The galaxy, battered and scarred, began to heal, but the victory came at a cost. The Deathworlders, hardened by endless battle, carried scars, both physical and emotional. Captain Varric understood that humanity's path was not just to fight, but to guide the galaxy toward unity and resilience. The aftermath saw the forging of a new coalition, one that embraced the strengths of all species, blending humanity's fierce survival instincts with the traditions and technologies of countless worlds. The Alliance's success became a legend, a testament to what could be achieved when differences were set aside for a common cause. In the closing scenes, Varric reflects on the journey, the distrust turned to respect, the savage battles, and the dawn of a new era. The galaxy had cried for help and humanity had answered with Deathworld fury, proving that survival, adaptability, and fierce determination were the keys to triumph.